Extra Space names a new president. Is it a sign of what's to come? We were live in New York yesterday for the NYSSA Investment Forum. Only time of year we get to hear all 6 REITs on stage together. So I caught up with Brett Henry, founder of Trojan Storage, and Jacob Pandel of Notify. We'll talk about what's in store for the new year. All that in an incredible episode of How Faith Fuels Your Business with the Senior Vice President of Safeguard, Stan Bonilla. Welcome to the Self-Storage Report, brought to you by QuikStor Property Software Management, built by operators for operators. I'm your host, Thaddeus Campbell, Director of Business Development and Strategic Branding for S3 Partners, 30 plus years, over 300 ground-up developments in self-storage, small bay flex, and boat and RV storage. If you are looking to build new construction, we can help make your dream come to life. From entitlement to certificate of occupancy, we've got you covered. Leading the show today, great news for friend of the podcast, Noah Springer. The former chief strategic officer at Extra Space now has a new title. As of Monday, Springer is the president of Extra Space, in a move widely considered to be a message to Wall Street about what's coming in the succession plans for the company after current CEO Joe Margolis decides to step down from his role as CEO. I was able to catch up with the new president yesterday in New York. I, of course, had Noah Springer on the Stories Behind the Door podcast earlier this year. He was very graceful in giving us time to talk to him. And I asked him, what does the promotion mean to him? He simply responded, super cool, before saying how humbled he was, how he is now directing many of the people he spent the last 20 years working side by side with at Extra Space. Not only is that a great responsibility, said Starr, but it's also will let him know quickly how he's interacted with those folks for the last 20 years, that he now has to be their boss. We'll have much more from Noah Springer next week. I'm going to catch up with him out in Snowmass at the Executive Ski Workshop, and we'll get some deeper comments and conversation about what it's going to mean for the future of Extra Space now that Noah Springer is the company president. If you haven't seen the Stories Behind the Door episode with Noah, you can click below and get his story firsthand. Incredible, from a small farm in central Illinois to president of an S&P 500 giant. It is an incredible story. No surprise to run into him at one of the most consequential storage events of the year. Yesterday on Park Avenue in New York City, major players from 26 different states converged for the investment forum. First and foremost, kudos to Rana Siegel, Nick Malagisi, Rana of the William Warren Group, Nick of Storage Realty Advisors, for putting together what, in my opinion, is the best show of the year in self-storage. Unfortunately, that was really the end of the good news. While NYSSA did an amazing job hosting more than 350 people from around the country, what they couldn't do was change the general mood that's infected the industry right now. Keynote speaker Ermengarde Jabir did nothing to change the somber tone of the morning panels, as the Moody's economists threw up a few slides that do not show great forecasts for some key trigger points for the industry. Moody's expects at least another 5 years of below average home movement. And not surprisingly, they're projecting no more than 2% rate growth in the storage sector over that same time period. And for those expecting possible 2026 Fed rate cuts to provide some interest rate relief, we heard from Sean Hill of BSC Capital that is an unlikely outcome. He cited the 50-point spread currently between rates and the 10-year Treasury that historically have been closer to 100 points, saying future reductions in the Fed overnight rate are likely already priced into the interest rate market. And his outlook was echoed by Jabir from Moody's. She was asked if more Fed cuts might actually have the opposite effect on interest rates. And she said it's actually more likely that continued Fed rate cuts may cause interest rates to go higher than that they'll come significantly further down. Her reasoning was very clear. The current rate of inflation is around 3%. The Fed is efforting to have that at 2%. And if we see the Fed rate cuts cause even higher inflation, that puts instability into the bond market. If the 10-year Treasury starts to rise because of that instability, well, that's only going to push mortgage rates that much higher. For those looking for interest rates to solve some current challenges, that overall consensus yesterday is you better find a different alternative. On the other hand, some good news. Capital still strongly attracted to the self-storage sector. Saul Hoppenstein of Berkadia Capital said a few other CRE sectors have fallen out of favor. He cited office as specifically. That has helped that capital focus into the self-storage sector. And so this is playing itself out most significantly in the bridge market. Not only are we seeing bridge loans, we're seeing bridge to bridge. And now we're even seeing bridge to bridge to bridge loans as new construction from 2020, 21, 22 is having a challenging time meeting pro formas that were laid out in a very different interest rate and actually rate environment for those projects. Fellow panelist Charles Byerly, Westport Properties, more than 200 locations across more than 300 locations, I think now across the country. He said going through underwriting now is akin to a colonoscopy. Banks are getting much more stringent, and even those large capital providers, private equity coming into the space, you need to have your information buttoned up. While his language wasn't quite as colorful as Byerly's, it's a conversation I had this week with Cody Baker. Friends of the show may remember Cody was on the Capital Markets Roundtable a couple weeks ago. I caught up to him again this week. Cody said the key to sourcing debt in 2026 will be having a watertight pro forma with all the supporting data to back up your projections. There's still money to be had for the right deals, but having your playbook written up is super key. Cody echoed sentiments from yesterday's NYSSA Forum, expecting 6.5% debt to be the new normal.
The last 20 years was we were just outrageously spoiled. I don't know if you look at like the average mortgage rates for the last like 40 years, 50 years. The last 20 years are the cheapest interest rates we've ever had in history.
Those are just a few takeaways from an incredible 5 hours of nonstop information from some of the most impactful names in the market. If you missed this year's forum, I cannot more strongly suggest, listen, become a member of the New York Self-Storage Association. They're doing groundbreaking work on the legislative level, a lot of bills that are coming up in front of the New York City Council and on a New York State level. In fact, 7 states last year, we heard from Tim Dietz, former head of SSA, 7 different states had rate cap legislation get proposed last year. Luckily, none of those passed, but of course, SB 709 out in California did pass. That disclosure law is now in full effect. The overall feeling is that is going to continue to be a trend in the market. So if you are not a member of NYSSA, you didn't go to the investment forum this year, strongly suggest it's a $295 a year membership. It's not outrageous, and you'll save almost that whole amount off of next year's investment forum. For my money, the best and most meaningful event of the year as far as getting real data and information about what's going on in the markets. A little bit of good news coming out of yesterday's show. The REITs incredibly active in 2026. Paul Spittle of Public Storage updated the year-end numbers I gave a couple weeks ago, and it's well beyond what I reported 2 weeks ago on the show. $1 billion in acquisitions for the largest player in the storage sector. I cited $631 million in my report 2 weeks ago. That actually represented only the portfolio acquisitions. They bought another $400 million of stores almost in individual purchases. Throw in over 20 ground-up developments in the works, and Public Storage very active in the market. Wayne Johnson of SmartStop joined the REIT panel for the first time. H. Michael Schwartz's company went public after a successful IPO in April. They raised nearly $1 billion in that IPO. Later in the year, pulled $500 million in Canadian maple bonds. That's $350 million US dollars. And they were super active in the market, acquiring $550 million in storage properties, 30% of that in Canada. And U-Haul, representative for U-Haul, Aaron Cook, said they purchased 100 properties in 2025. Interestingly, many of their acquisitions also north of the border. Well, what's coming in 2026? I touched base earlier this week with 2 people I respect greatly in their respective roles. Starting out with Brett Henry, the founder and CEO of Trojan Storage. I wanted to see what he thinks is in store for operators in the new year?
I'm optimistic. I thought last year was the best year we've had over the last three. At Trojan, it was definitely the best year. We saw a lot of growth from same store revenues that have been generally flat or slightly up. And I'm optimistic that 2026 is going to build on 2025.
Brett built his first portfolio right as the GFC started, sold it, and started Trojan in the mid 2010s. I was interested to see if he thinks there's still a place in 2026 for the type of entrepreneur he was when he first got into storage.
I think it's really challenging to go build one site and not be a true operator and move into a market and think you're gonna build scale.
Fascinating take by the CEO of Trojan and also our title sponsor, QuikStor. Thanks to Brett for the support of the show. He went on to say that access to data that major players in the space have today is critical to making the correct decisions to move forward, especially when it comes to ground up development, where you simply need to have accurate rate data or the mistakes can be devastating. Well, AI was the big buzzword of 2025, and I wanted to get the latest on what role technology will play in storage this year. So I got a hold of Jacob Pandel, founder and CEO of Notify.
You have these laggard industries that maybe were resistant to technology, and they kind of drift along for a little bit from a like technology evolution standpoint. And then because of that, they haven't accumulated all of this tech debt is what we would say in the tech industry, and they're able to kind of like leapfrog over an entire era of like old technology and actually like charge forward and be sort of industry leaders.
He sees this year as a major one for those catching up with innovation in the sector. Jacob used China as an example of this concept. Interestingly, the country never adopted credit card processing machines. They skipped right from the old school swipe the Amex card right to using your phone to use things like Apple Pay to make payments through your cell phone. The introduction of AI is not going to spell the end of the need for humans anytime soon, according to the Notify founder. He says it's going to more clearly define the roles people play.
Like internally, what kind of the mantra that I'm trying to bring into Notify for 2026 is like, let the machines do machine work and let people do people work, and I think the scope of what the machine work can do is really growing, but ultimately, I'm optimistic that that's just going to let people do more of the people work that we're really good at.
Pandel says machine learning is really good at compiling data, but the critical role of developing a strategy from that data is still something at which humans are far ahead of AI. And of course, in the human interaction, in that sales process and in the conversation process, AI can still cannot fully replace the skills that humans have in that sector. For those of you Terminator fans worried about Skynet, Pandel says he has great faith in the incredible minds in the Silicon Valley and beyond that are having constant daily discussions about how to move forward in AI in a way that's going to be safe and productive for society as a whole. Really want to thank Jacob Pandel and Brett Henry for taking time out of their week to give us some insight onto what they see coming forward in 2026. A full show this week. We're going to finish with an incredible testimonial from a close friend of both myself and the podcast. Stan Bonilla is the Senior Vice President of Safeguard Self-Storage. He was actually a panelist yesterday at the NYSSA Investment Forum, also a board member of the New York Self-Storage Association, someone who contributes greatly to the self-storage industry. Before I renamed the podcast Stories Behind the Door, Stan was my final guest on the old Defining Your Niche podcast that I ran. He's appeared frequently on the Self-Storage Report, both in clips as a guest. We cite him frequently on the show over the last 7 months. And today, we get to hear something a little different with Stan in terms of how his relationship with God plays a crucial role in his role at Safeguard Self-Storage on this episode of How Faith Fuels Your Business.
First, thank you for having me and thank you for the opportunity to talk about this because it is the cornerstone of who I am. And I'll start by saying that there's not a work stand and a home stand and a church stand and a neighborhood stand. It's I am Stan, and I am a servant of God. By grace, I've been called, and through faith in Christ, I've been able to live my life, and He's given us His Word to understand the truth from fiction and truth from lies. Each morning, I remember where I am. I dedicate my day and whatever task I'm working on to the glory of God. That sounds, I know, a little bit old fashioned to a lot of people. And a lot of people don't quite understand that. And that's okay, because this is something between me and God, versus like Colossians, where it says, whatever you do, do for the glory of God. Whatever you lay, Ecclesiastes says, whatever you lay your hand on to do it with all of your might. And it's as when I'm doing something, God put me here at Safeguard, and I look at the path that brought me to where I am today, and I have complete faith that this is part of His greater plan. That His plan is already complete. It's already written. We're just living it out now. I'm here because God made me a steward over the things that He's given to me. They aren't mine. Whatever I have is passing on, right? My job is to take what He's given me and grow it. We are blessed in America because we have the freedom and we have the ability to speak our faith. And when you don't feel that hate and you don't feel that anger towards you, I kind of ask myself, am I doing it right? We were promised. God said that, that people will hate you for it and you're going to be persecuted for it. But there's not persecution in America for the most part, although there's some anger out there. And I thank God for it when I see it, because I know that people are doing their job, and you just have faith that much more. So thank you for giving this platform. And I continue to pray for you and everybody who watches this, that maybe they might see some light and have some questions that only God can answer.
So grateful for Stan Bonilla to come and share his incredible testimonial, the full version of How Faith Fuels Your Business. That complete interview with Stan will be live on the YouTube channel on Monday. So make sure you check that out. Of course, if you follow me on LinkedIn, I'll throw up a link to that on LinkedIn early next week as well. If you're not subscribed to the Self-Storage Report on YouTube, please click the button. We certainly appreciate your support, whether you follow on LinkedIn, the clips we put on Instagram and Facebook. We have so many people that have supported this show in incredible ways, and we are so grateful. I will echo Stan's sentiment. I also a strong believer in Christ and the plan that God has for me. This segment of How Faith Fuels Your Business has been so impactful, and I so believe that this is a big reason of why God put me in this place of doing this podcast. So thanks to Stan. Next week, we're going to have an episode from a very special guest, Terry Campbell, Johnson Insurance, another supporter of the show. Terry's going to join us with How Faith Fuels Your Business, and I have a few other guests lined up that I'm very excited to share this segment every week on the show. That's it for this episode of the Self-Storage Report. Look out for next week's episode where, as I said, we're going to have a sit down out in Snowmass at the Executive Ski Workshop from SSA with the new president of Extra Space, Noah Springer. We're going to catch up with a bunch of other industry leaders in Colorado as well, get some insights from them as to what's going on in the industry and what we can expect as we move through 2026. Again, huge thank you to our title sponsor, QuikStor, Brett Henry, Andre Hadzi-Pavlovich, Shayna Kosert, incredible team that's been working diligently over the last 5 years to build this incredible, I call it the Italian supercar of storage property management software. Feel free to click the link if you want to get a demo of this incredible software. The team will take you through it, and mention TSSR, and they're going to give you a pretty significant discount if you decide to adopt the QuikStor software. Would be remiss without mentioning our friends at Tract IQ, Noah Starr and his team. Keep an eye out. I teased a couple weeks ago or last week. I can't remember when I did it. They've got a big new data drop coming to the site January 20th. Don't be afraid to reach out to Noah and his team. If you already use Tract IQ, touch base with them, get them to give you a demo of that software. If you are not a user of Tract IQ, cannot more strongly suggest they have some new data coming to the platform that just simply doesn't exist on any other data platform in storage. So go to tractiq.com/TSSR. Again, you're going to get a discount as somebody who came from the show. Please support those folks as they've supported our show and made it possible for us to bring this incredible information. Not everyone's able to get a ticket to go to New York and go to the investment forum. Not everyone's able to go to Las Vegas for the SSA, but you can tune into LinkedIn, usually Thursdays at 1 p.m., unless we're traveling or doing something crazy, and get a roundup of all that information from significant folks in the industry. And without the support from teams like QuikStor and Johnson Insurance and Tract IQ, we would not be able to bring this information to you. So really thank those folks. If you're getting value from the show, please, the greatest thanks you can give us is go visit our sponsors and support them as well. As I said, that's it for this week's episode of the Self-Storage Report. I'm your host, Thaddeus Campbell, Director of Business Development and Strategic Branding at S3 Partners. We've got over 30 years, over 300 self-storage facilities, small bay flex, boat and RV. If you're looking at a ground-up development, we can help you from entitlement right through to certificate of occupancy and the handoff to whoever you're going to use to manage that property. If you have a dream to build a self-storage, small bay flex, boat and RV facility, we can help make you realize that dream. That's it for this week's show. I will see everybody next week.